back to my setting. I have a complicated history with urban fantasy as a genre. I am always on the lookout for a new fix, a new comfort blanket of a new read, but I also have a feeling that it is a genre that's stuck in the 90s, for better and for worse, so I tend to drop them like they're hot as soon as I get a whiff of a bad sequel. I almost think of urban fantasy sequels as seasons of a TV show. So today, instead of rewatching Angel for the eighth time, I would like to talk about Fated by Benedict Jacka. It's a debut novel by him in the Verus series, and it came out in 2012. So, who is Alex? Alex Verus is a diviner. He is a mage with a shop of magical items in London. It's a useful skill for a mage, even, and it's a skill that attracts a lot of unwanted attention from others, from forces who wield much more deadly powers than himself. And when these forces seek him out, he is cornered and in a position where he cannot hide. So that would be the non-spoiler, setup. Let's go by what I expected. Well, to be honest, I expected a Dresden Files alike, which I don't think I'm alone. Usually with urban fantasy, and if you have a male protagonist, the first kind of book that comes to mind is Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. And I don't think that I expected a knockoff, but because I don't like to be this unkind before reading the book, Dresden Files is influential for a reason, but I expected something that followed this tradition closely. What I got a book that was heavily influenced by Dresden, technically, but I actually say that it used Dresden formula that Jim Butcher perfected, but it leaned on sources that influenced Jim Butcher to write his series. So they were kind of drawing from the same well, but I think learning from mistakes that Butcher did. So what I liked, let's move on to what I liked. The choice to make Alex's abilities to be clairvoyance, not to be offensive kind, fireball flinging, flashy displays of arcane power, that was a good choice. I think it's one of the biggest strengths of Jacka as an author here, because not only it's more difficult to make a divining power narratively exciting. I mean, after all, seeing the future kills the surprise, right? But I think he manages to develop many applications for this power. He manages to make it dynamic during conflicts. It's all about multiple possibilities. These possibilities sometimes lead to his goal, and sometimes the future has so many fractured moments that lead to catastrophic outcomes that Alex is frozen and unable to decide which future to follow to which outcome. And that makes it interesting. I think that also bleeds into characterization. Alex is naturally cautious. He does not rush headlong into conflict, and he possesses an immensely practical mind. He's a survivor at his core. Not only because of his past, he suffers from trauma from his past, but also because of the nature of his power. And these two things feel very organically intertwined in him as a character. Also, setting-wise, it's always refreshing to see an urban fantasy novel that's not set in US. London is a welcome change. And side characters are were delightful, especially Arachne. I am well, I'm easy to please when it comes to gentle giant sort of characters. Characters who appear as monsters but have hearts of gold. I have a soft spot for those. Now, what I didn't care for. Well, some plot beats feel both very familiar and very predictive. And urban fantasy often comes with its own subset of tropes. We have a loner main character with an office or shop. So, let's say Iron Druid with his herb shop, Dresden with his agency, my favorite Sandman Slim with his video store. They usually don't fit into either magical or normal world. They have an apprentice or a confidant amongst normals, and usually that character who is normal serves as an audience surrogate or even a magical sidekick, troubled past. I mean, I could go on all day. And yes, these things are part of a formula, and it's a formula that's proven to work. But things like troubled past here were too much on the nose and too lampshaded, especially with the female antagonist. It felt like the author was shining this giant 500-watt projector and not a lamp towards her. I mean, yes, we have been told repeatedly that Alex had a traumatic past when he was an apprentice mage, and he repeatedly mentions a female name, another apprentice perhaps, that he left behind. And then we have this new mysterious figure who recognizes Alex, and he has a feeling that he knows her from somewhere. And then again we're reminded that he had a troubled past, and it's reiterated too much, especially since this is a short novel, which I think is a good thing, because there is a reason why urban fantasy novels are usually short, because they don't have that much of large cast or much subplots, so it works in their favor to be tighter. And here we have a limited amount of words, and the author is still reiterating something that's already being hinted at. I mean, the same thing is with his sidekick, well, his apprentice, even though she's not officially an apprentice, Luna. She's an interesting character. She is an example of a side character done right. We have a hint of her backstory, but it's not hammered into us repeatedly. But something that it is hammered repeatedly is the notion that, well, she's not an apprentice, but she's sort of an apprentice, and she's totally become an apprentice in future books, like officially. And maybe too much. Also, a very, very minor thing, something that I would not usually, well, I would usually notice, but not hold it too high of a criticism, is his reference, author's reference to Dresden at the beginning of the book. I think that was just too much. There is this small bit of dialogue about, we are being introduced to our protagonist, Alex. He has this magical shop that's sort of a front, his day job that he is leading, and he's talking about other mages, and there's even this guy in Chicago who even has an ad in newspapers about being a wizard. And it's just a personal pet peeve of mine. I'm never a guy who likes that sort of fourth wall breaking. I It's too direct. Predictions for next book. Honestly, as I said, that mostly urban fantasy doesn't have very convoluted plots like fantasy novels, like Wheel of Time, for example. So let's just say more shady council member stuff. Hopefully more backstory about Arachne and how she met Alex, or the wind elemental. Let's move on to verdict. Familiar doesn't have to be a negative. Benedict Jacka is like a well-practiced musician doing a really skillful and enjoyable rendition of your favorite song. It's a song that's almost pitch perfect from what you remember, but there is a slight variation, slight improvisation bit that shows a promise of personality coming through. So if I would rate it, I'd rate it 4 stars out of 5. It is definitely one of the stronger first books in urban fantasy series. For example, Dresden Files, a notoriously limp first book. I read it ages ago and I did not continue it. I hope to revisit it sometime in the future, because everyone keeps talking that after book 4 it really picks up. But I have a kind of a soft rule about not forcing myself through 4, 3, however books until it gets good, and this is good from the start. It's very enjoyable, and I hope it doesn't drop off with quality in the sequels. Like I said, my favorite urban fantasy series is Sandman Slim series by Richard Cadry. And I'd like to introduce a new segment of the show, which is recommendations. If you liked X, you will like Y. Now, I do recommend that you read and buy and support this author. I will link the links for this book below. But if you're looking for something more adventurous, more raw, more energetic, more exciting, I heavily recommend Sandman Slam. It's a urban fantasy series about a guy who gets sent to hell as a living being, and he gets back from hell for revenge. And it's a story, it's a conflict between heaven and hell, and it has amazing supporting cast, and if anything, it never drops up with quality. It maintains its quality, it constantly tries different things from book to book. I recommend it. And also I would like to give a shout out to my faithful Patreon supporter, Ethan Packy. Thank you, Ethan, for supporting me still. It means a lot to me. Thanks to your support, I bought this camera lighting thingy. So hopefully my videos look better than they usually do. And I started reading the 6th Wheel of Time book today, so Let's Read Wheel of Time is returning shortly, so be on the lookout for those. Thank you guys and gals and everyone else for watching, and see you next time.